Holy frickin' cow. So, big news coming across the THJ news lines. It appears that our wonderful, loving Aporia has put out an announcement. Everyone, good evening, heroes. I'm happy to share that as of tonight, the court entered and agreed to and jointly requested order that resolves Daybreak's request for a TRO. That means temporary relief order, for those of you who aren't aware of legal jargon. As a part of this agreement and continuing our commitment to act in good faith, we are officially suspending the release of all major updates, new items, or mechanics until permitted to do so. So that is, solo self-found, hardcore, dungeon finder, all of that various different things, potentially also gates of discord. That's, to be expected. They can't really change a whole lot of stuff, but we are, however, incredibly grateful that players are allowed to access and play on THJ. Moreover, we are also thankful for the flexibility enabling us to make routine changes and maintenance like bug fixes in the meantime, meaning THJ ain't getting shut down. Oh yeah. We had faith, we maintained faith, and the Emperor protects. So we continue to get to play on our favorite server, which is freaking awesome. And I'm not gonna make this sound or play like Daybreak didn't have to come to the table to make this happen as well. So for those of you over at Daybreak that allowed this to happen, thank you. I appreciate you. And I really genuinely have the utmost respect for you guys allowing this to continue and coming to this agreement. I appreciate it personally, and I'm sure the community of THJ does as well. So thank you. In accordance with this order, we are posting the following public statement. The hero's journey is currently subject to pending litigation brought by Daybreak Games Company, LLC, regarding intellectual property and other related matters. While that case proceeds, a stipulated order found here with a link has been agreed to by the parties in the litigation and is subject to enforcement by the United States District Court for the Southern District of California. We know this has been stressful for many of you, but please know that you are not alone. We are doing everything in our power to see this through to a positive outcome for our community and all involved parties. You can look forward to an announcement soon of a downtime to bring live many bug fixes outlined in the test log, which if we go over to the test log, there's tons of stuff. I mean, they've literally been freaking ground pounding all these issues and just waiting for this approval to kind of get these things going. So this is awesome. There's so many fixes in here. I mean, we talked about it during the Q&A, so I'm not going to get into all this. This is great. This is awesome news. The announcement basically outlines that they're going to stay up. They're going to continue doing what they're doing. They're going to continue all things within the confines of this stipulation. Now, this stipulation, we'll go ahead and click on this, which brings us to a court document, which will blow up so you guys can see real good here. So if you look at this, this is a basically a court document. It is document 29. There's been a lot of motions submitted in this case, which we'll get into in a moment. But we want to go over the stipulation order. Basically, what was happening is Daybreak came in and tried to file a TRO, that's that relief order, against the server to force them to shut down. They also filed an order to request that essentially sealed all of the information and therefore would have prevented the public from hearing about it, knowing about it. These documents would not be public. It would all be hidden away and be happening behind closed doors. No one would be the wiser. That was not granted. And so when that was not granted, we wound up with this. We wound up with this court case that's happening in the wide open. There's tons of people making videos. There's tons of people speculating. Project Quorum was taken down in quote unquote an abundance of caution. Uh, you know, uh, there was tons and tons of speculation being thrown out there as to why it was taken down, what's happening, whether or not these guys care about the EQMU community or anything. And what I can tell you is, while I am not speaking for them by any stretch, I am not someone with a legal degree. I am not someone who has any type of legal standing to represent law or otherwise. I do have a history of working within the court system as a former parole officer. So while I cannot advise how to proceed or how not to proceed or give any type of advice, I do have a general understanding of what these things mean and how this stuff typically works. Beyond that, Aporia, Kata, the greater THJ project is not. This is not me speaking on behalf of them or anything of that nature. This is me talking of my own volition. After this announcement came out today, I really wanted to. I've been wanting to make a video all along, but honestly, there's been a lot of drama surrounding this, a lot of speculation surrounding this, and I don't really want to get into like a tit for tat battle with people online about what is or isn't. And I also don't want to get into this place where, oh, this one's good and that one's bad, and we're a community. The THJ community is a great community. The EverQuest emulator community is a great community, and we should have each other's backs. We should be standing arm in arm to support this thing that we all love and know. We shouldn't be out there boo-booing and poo-pooing and pointing fingers and trying to kneecap the guy standing next to us so he gets caught by the bear and not us. That's not really great. And frankly, that's really not what the community that I'm a part of is about. So without further ado, we're going to continue going into this document, but I wanted to say those things out loud just so there's no question or anything like that. So this is like, I don't know if you guys have ever read legal documentation, but it reads terrible. It reads like legal documentation. It's terrible. It's barely English in my opinion. But it is what it is. So whereas on June 10th, 2025, plaintiff Daybreak Game Company, LLC Daybreak filed a complaint, ECF number 1, alleging copyright infringement, violations of Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, trademark dilution, unfair competition, breach of contract, and unjust enrichment against individuals. Christopher and Takashi and Alexander Taylor, defendants, in connection with their alleged illegal creation, operation, and promotion of the Hero's Journey emulator that Daybreak alleges, inter alia, copies Daybreak's copyrighted game content, circumvents Daybreak's technological protection measures, dilutes Daybreak's famous EverQuest mark, and generates revenue through a donation system. So Daybreak's famous EverQuest mark that generates revenue through a donation system. So the donation thing is listed. However, it's just one of the many things that's listed. There's several others. There's other locations, servers, etc. within the EQMU populace, which also collects money as well. So I don't know. I think anyone who's saying this is the only reason, or this is the reason that THJ is being attacked, is not really looking at the total picture and the bigger picture and the greater story. Whereas on June 16th, 2025, Daybreak filed its amended application for temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, amended TRO application. Essentially, the first one was denied, and so they filed another one, essentially outlining another reason to get it. Now, whether or not that would have been granted or not, that's for the courts to say. We're not going to speculate on that. Judges make those decisions. Attorneys argue those points. Not for us to deliberate. Whereas on June 17th, 2025, Daybreak filed an ex parte application to advance hearing date on its amended TRO application, motion to advance. ECF number 13 is basically its evidence number 13, which defendants oppose on June 23, 2025. Whereas the court granted Daybreak's motion to advance in part on June 24th, 2025, scheduling an oral argument on the temporary restraining order sought by Daybreak in its amended TRO application for July 2nd, 2025. So they filed another motion because the first one was not granted. It was scheduled to be heard. The defendants, who is THJ, essentially said, hey, we would like to argue this in person. And whereas the parties agree, in order to preserve judicial resources and facilitate a prompt hearing and determination of Daybreak's request for a preliminary injunction, motion for preliminary injunction, to submit this stipulated order resolving Daybreak's amended TRO application, pending court approval and endorsement, and request that the stipulated order be entered. So essentially what this is saying is that the court hearing for the TRO, again, temporary relief order, essentially outlines that there was going to be a court date. They were going to discuss it during that court date. And instead of having the TRO, instead of requesting the TRO, they would like to grant a stipulated TRO, stipulated meaning as long as you abide by these things, we'll allow you to do these things. And so basically, THJ made an agreement with Daybreak that so long as we only operate within the confines of these agreements, we're allowed to continue to operate, which is what you're seeing. So we go down here. Whereas the parties agree in order to preserve judicial... Okay, we already went over this, so cut that part out. Whereas the defendants deny any wrongdoing, whereas the parties have agreed to stipulate to the below restrictions until the court can hear oral arguments from both sides regarding Daybreak's motion for preliminary injunction. Whereas the court retains the power to enforce any violation by defendants or Another Quest LLC. Another Quest is the essentially LLC or company that owns THJ or that operates THJ. There we could get into the whole business nonsense and all that. And again, more speculation. We're not going to get into speculation. We're about facts here. We're not here to say, man, I feel this way or I feel that way. This is purely about the facts. Therefore, it is now hereby stipulated and agreed by and between the parties through their counsel and ordered by this court that pending the hearing and determination of Daybreak's motion for preliminary injunction, agreed upon restrictions and actions, defendants and all persons in their control and acting in concert with them shall immediately cease and desist from and or take the following actions within 1 business day of entry of this stipulation order. Update restrictions and preservation of revenue. Suspension of THJ updates. Defendants shall postpone, cancel, or otherwise refrain from releasing the announced major update to THJ that had been scheduled for approximately June 20th, 2025, and all other updates, including new content, in-game items, and game mechanics other than minor bug fixes or other routine changes to maintain THJ, collectively, updates. Defendants shall not otherwise disseminate the June 20th, 2025 update or any other updates, whether in whole or in part or in any modified form, until permitted to do so by this court or by agreement of the parties. So essentially they're saying, hey, listen, solo self-found, hardcore, play modes basically can't come out. That sucks, but at the end of the day, this is really great. It's really great for both parties because what it says is they're willing to come to the table, they're willing to have a discussion, and they're willing to say, hey, do we move forward? How can we move forward? And how can we move forward in an amicable way for both parties? That's great news. This is fantastic news. Yes, we're not going to get play modes. We're not going to probably get any kind of special events for 4th of July or otherwise until the court stuff or court allows it to do so. There is no, probably not going to be like a Gates of Discord or Dungeon Finder or any of those things. Those are all major updates that will be coming out while this particular stipulation is in place. They're basically saying, hey, listen, until this is ordered otherwise, you cannot do these things. And both parties agreed. So this is it. I know this sounds like, oh man, my thing isn't going to come out, or oh man, I really wish they could have this. But at the end of the day, we're still able to remain, on the server. We're still able to play the server and enjoy the server with these things coming. And honestly, the best part, in my opinion, is that this gives them time to continue to work on these things, build them up, and make them better than ever. Possibly. Maybe not. Maybe they work on other things. I don't know. There's tons of bug fixes too. We went over at the start of this video all of the various different things that they can work on, all of the various different things that they can look at. That's great. In my book, this is whatever they decide to work on. It's great news. This is great for both parties, as well as all the players. This is the important part, which I think should make some of those people out there who are screaming from the rooftops that RMT is the damnation and darkness. Preservation and escrow of revenue. Defendants will not disseminate any proceeds from all donation systems, payment processing, and or revenue collection mechanisms associated with THJ other than for professional services and other ordinary and reasonable business expenses, and agree to maintain records of the dissemination of any such proceeds. Defendants also will provide an accounting to counsel for Daybreak on a weekly basis of all such proceeds and payments. Daybreak reserves the right to challenge the propriety of any such dissemination of proceeds, including without limitation as part of Daybreak's damages as set forth in the complaint. On the last business day of each month, while the stipulated order is in place, any remaining proceeds will be placed in an agreed upon third-party escrow account. So what this means is they can continue to collect donations. Those donations can then be utilized to pay staff. Those can be used to purchase server upgrades. Those can be utilized to purchase portions of code. Those could be used to purchase, any number of things. Operational business. It's pretty wide open, as long as you can show. There's a standard. It has to be reasonable. So, does THJ need a full-blown kiddie pool to operate their business? Probably not. So if they were to purchase a kiddie pool, then yeah, maybe we would be looking at some weird stuff there. That might be looked at. However, if they're paying staff, if they're paying for the servers, all of these things, they have the ability to continue to collect money and continue to pay for these things. So again, huge W. Daybreak is allowing them to continue doing this, and any profits as a result of that go into an escrow account. Okay. So where this is huge is that money goes into essentially a pot at the end. So if there's all this extra money, all that money goes into a pot, and that pot then gets reviewed, and the court will decide how that gets divvied up, if they get to keep it all. Maybe they come up with an agreement with Daybreak that says, hey, listen, we're going to purchase a licensing system from you, or we're going to agree that a certain percentage of all royalties go to you. There's a lot of different things that could happen. Again, I don't want to speculate too far into this. These are things that they will come up with plans with. These are issues that their lawyers will have. And there isn't a single body on YouTube other than the parties that are at that table that know or have any insight as to what may or may not happen. And so when you hear people out there speculating, don't run with that stuff. Just, hear it, comprehend it, and let it sit, Don't run around with it. When you do that kind of thing, you are essentially spreading farce, and we really don't want to do that. So let's see here. Agreed public statement. No later than one business day after entry of the stipulated order, defendants agree to post prominently on THJ's Discord server and website, theheroesjourney.com. The following public statement: the hero's journey is currently subject to pending litigation brought by Daybreak Game Company LLC regarding intellectual property and other related matters. While the case proceeds, a stipulated order found here. Does this sound familiar? Maybe we saw this in the Discord. Yeah, that's because they're required to do so, and they did. They've already done so. They had 1 business day to do so. They didn't even wait 1 business day. They creamed that corn and got it in there. Great. So they're in compliance with this. Wonderful. Preservation of evidence. Comprehensive preservation order. The defendants and all those acting in concert with them, including but not limited to Another Quest LLC, shall immediately preserve all evidence related to THJ within their possession, custody, and control, including but not limited to the following: all source code, all communications between defendants and contributors, all financial records and transaction data, all promotional materials and marketing content, and all GitHub repositories, Discord communications, and online content. So what this means is all of this stuff is going to be discoverable. And what discovery is when you go to a trial and you essentially have that evidence, it actually doesn't happen like you would see in TV, where like some guy runs out of a back room with a piece of paper and like runs into the courtroom and throws it in front of the judge. And then it's like this damning evidence that, you know, completely changes the facts of the case. That is not something that happens. In fact, that is actually in most courts, especially in any court I've ever been in, that is not part of the process. In fact, that evidence would not be, you wouldn't be able to use it because all evidence is essentially run through a discovery system, which is essentially there's a process in which discovery is explored, meaning parties go out and they gather all of the information and data that they possibly can. And then that discovery is then shared with both parties. So both parties have essentially full access to everything the other party has. And then once that discovery has been processed, reviewed, rebutted, so you can say, I don't feel like this piece of discovery is relevant because of the following reasons, and the court will rule. I could get into the like nuances and things like that of the discovery process, but I don't really think that that's going to be helpful in this case because we're not sitting in the room with them and we won't see half of this stuff happen if they even get to this point. But basically what this is allowing it to do is allowing them to collect all of the data and do so in a recorded manner so that discovery can be not only located but provided, which, you know, this makes sense. It's pretty standard SOP. So temporary jurisdictional and procedural waivers. Defendants will not file any motion prior to the court's hearing and determination of Daybreak's motion for preliminary injunction, raising any of the following: any challenge to this court's personal jurisdiction over the defendants. So basically, they will not challenge the court or location. They won't try to move the case to like Florida or, you know, Massachusetts or, you know, whatever, Maine, freaking Hawaii, where, you know, wherever. They won't try to move the case around. Any challenge to venue in the United States District Court for the Southern District. Yeah. So again, basically what they're saying is you agree not to try and punt this case somewhere else. You agree to keep this case right here. We're agreeing to sit down with you and have this conversation, but we want to make sure that this conversation continues to happen here in this court with the same parties and not, you know, bouncing it all over the place. Defendants reserve the right to raise such arguments before the court in their briefing or as part of the hearing on the motion for preliminary injunction or thereafter, including without limitation as one of the grounds on which to deny the motion for preliminary injunction and or dismiss the complaint. Again, it's just saying that, you know, if you did want to do any of these things, you had to do so in this way on this point. At this particular point, we don't know what that is. So, you know, I doubt that's going to happen anyway. It's a very specific situation in which that stuff would happen. Continuation of existing operations, existing player access, Nothing in this stipulated order shall prevent THJ users from continuing to access and play on the THJ servers using their accounts until the court's determination on Daybreak's motion for a preliminary injunction, provided that defendants do not release substantive new content, e.g., the June 20th, 2025 patch, or implement new in-game items or mechanics during the pendency of this stipulated order. Nothing in this stipulated order shall prevent defendants from implementing bug fixes or other routine changes to maintain THJ. It is so ordered. Dated June 27th, 2025. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, this is great news. This is amazing news. What this means is that not only is Daybreak willing to come and sit down at the table and have a discussion about this stuff, but it means that we can continue playing the server that we love, the games that we love, and play alongside the friends and family that we've made while playing on these servers. And we can continue with whether it's the EQ community, whether it's the THJ community, or the emulator community as a whole. This is a wonderful thing. Again, we should not be out here kneecapping the guy standing next to us so the bear gets them instead of us. We should be working together. Both sides of this, we should be looking to preserve, and we should be looking to love and share what we love. You know, we should all be out here standing from the rooftops talking about how awesome this thing is, this piece of art, this piece of great history. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I started playing EverQuest when I was 12 years old. So for me, this is history. I'm in my 40s now. Good God, I'm old. But anyway, this is great news for all of us. So as a community, I love you all. Thank you for checking this out. And now that this stuff is more out in the open, I'll likely be more willing to talk about it. But again, what I ask all of you and what I would say to all of you is, if you're in my comments, if you're in my stream, if you're anywhere around where I am, be respectful of one another, be thoughtful. Everybody on both sides of the fence are humans, they're people, and they don't deserve any type of harassment, bullying, or otherwise. So just be kind. And remember, we're all here because we love the same thing.